The objective of the project is really to look into East Bottoms and think about the possibility how we can create the public, continuous public right-of-way that connects East Bottoms into the rest of Kansas City and integrates it as a part of its inhabitable and publicly accessible environment, while at the same time dealing with issues of resilience. The way we organize presentation today has actually two parts. The first part is the presentation of the overall plan and ideas and what we have come up with. And then the second part will be 4 different areas that were kind of selected for focus design, development, and studies. Due to the nature of the project, we really cannot break ourselves into smaller groups and give you a chance to kind of more one-on-one discussion. We ask for your patience to kind of participate with us in the presentation of the entire length of the project, and then you'll have a chance to discuss the different parts with us. So first we'll present the introduction and overall concept, as I mentioned, and then we will go into 3, or actually 4 different study areas, which we will present one at a time and then pause and give you a chance to discuss and provide your feedback and input. As Mariah mentioned, we also posted our project on the website, so we also invite you to kind of view the website and provide your feedback and comments on the website too. Also, if you have specific questions that you want to be able to engage with and kind of remind us of what they are, please use the chat tab and type your questions in so we can address them. So with this, I will turn it to Charmaine Kulala, who's going to do the first part of the presentation. Charmaine, take it on from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Vlad. Hi, everyone. My name is Charmaine Kilala, and I will be presenting our East Bottoms Visioning Study Project. On behalf of the studio, we really want to thank you guys again for joining us in our open house. Let's begin. Located in the floodplain bounding the Missouri River and the Blue River, the East Bottoms, along with the West Bottoms, are industrial areas in Kansas City. Done in collaboration with the City Planning of Kansas City, we went through a series of inventory and analytical mapping that led to our project framework. We've also used existing city plans of Blue River and Northeast Industrial Plan in order to understand East Bottoms even further. The project consists of creating a continuous public right-of-way in the industrial area of East Bottoms that connects to the rivers, connects to the city, and finally connects the city to the river. Despite its historical geographical roots, East Bottoms is currently riddled with heavy industry and rails, effectively separating the city from the rivers. This time, this massive industrial area is disconnected to the fabric of the city, but we found that it embodies some significant qualities to it that are part of the identity of the city, particularly its relationship to the riverfront. Our project is to rethought and reconfigure this industrial area in a way that makes it an inhabitable part of Kansas City. This is just a summary of what is the existing industry that is present in the site. We have some manufacturers, some trades, some retails and construction. Historically, East Bottoms have dealt with flooding because of its geographical location. This has resulted to its residential functions migrating into higher ground, leaving this place into a no man's land. Throughout our study, we got to these conclusions that basically East Bottoms is essentially a bowl that is affected by polluted runoff that stays in the site, with a river belt that is majorly dealing with adaptation from risk of flooding from the Missouri River. Because of heavy traffic and rails, and because of underutilized Riverfront Park, which, by the way, is bigger than New York City Central Park, the East Bottoms is very disconnected within, it's very disconnected to the rivers and to the rest of the city. And lastly, we found that in East Bottoms, there are these different areas with different qualities to them. And there are these huge, significant industrial buildings that command presence to themselves because of their size. From these findings, we created our one goal, a new paradigm where the industry and public realm can coexist. We created several objectives to make this possible. First, we need to make this a safe and inhabitable place by building resiliency and sustainable adaptation in East Bottoms. We created a green infrastructure system that will not only reduce air and soil pollution, but will also manage stormwater runoff, and prevent the sewer system from overflowing and contaminating East Bottoms, the Missouri River. And then we want to create a public right-of-way that connects East Bottoms internally, connects it to West Bottoms, connects to the rivers, and finally to the rest of the city. And lastly, we want to turn this no man's land into a destination site that makes use and celebrate what is existing in the site. To do this, we created a trail system that is integrated with the needed green infrastructure network. And in this trail system, we created these loops that build upon the found qualities in the site. Within these loops, we have this what we call follies that serves as organizing elements. And this folly system that we created, this is a repeatable system of kit of parts that provide functioning programmatic elements that support the use and the function of the trail, while providing wayfinding and organizing elements while also elevating the identity of the place. In this Folly system, this is a kit of parts that can be combined into different arrangements such as footbridge, tower that can respond to specific needs of different areas of the trail. It is conceived of a system of prefabricated elements that can be easily assembled and adapted into specific site conditions. And here is an example of one of our towers and what it could look like when it's assembled. Our trail system was designed in a way that connects this unique areas with different qualities to them. And here we will show you the experiential continuum of what this trail system could look like. Starting with Electric Park, which connects the city to the Riverfront and East Bottoms via Chestnut and Gwinnett. Electric Park builds upon the existing urban core and serves as a connection from the city to the river belt. The Riverfront Park, a resilient urban park that capitalizes on the hydrological changes and the creation of a shifting environment that adapts to the river and absorbs its negative impact. The Industrial District, which has the greenhouse, a resilient year-round food production site where we explored the intersection of green infrastructure and public space into a new urban typology. The rest of our industrial system, connecting the existing STEM schools and community college to the industry, providing catalytic spaces that promotes interaction and learning. And lastly, the working landscape, mainly a low-lying land where most of the stormwater runoff gets conveyed and cleaned, where we are also restoring natural habitats while creating a coexistence of industry, public realm, and wildlife. All these key areas comprise our East Bottoms Trail. That is all of it.
Can I just let everyone know? So there's a couple of phone numbers and attendees that are not on mute. Please mute yourself. It makes quite a bit of noise when you're not muted.
Charmaine, are you still presenting, Charmaine?
No, I'm done. Sorry. I didn't know if, did you want me to leave it to the screen or should I stop sharing?
Could you once again explain to people 4 different areas, please?
The Electric Park District, like I said, this is the one that connects the city to the river belt and to the rest of East Bottoms using Gwinnett and also Chestnut Trafficway. The Riverfront Park, which is a resilient urban park that majorly deals with protecting this part of the East Bottoms. And then the Industrial District, which houses the greenhouse, which is a resilient year-round food production site. And this area basically provides catalytic spaces for learning and interaction. And lastly, the working landscape. In our green infrastructure system, most of the water goes to the working landscape because this is the lowest part of East Bottoms. This is the area where most of the water gets conveyed and cleaned. And this becomes the main driving factor of the design of the working landscape.
Okay.
Should I stop sharing or?
So at this point, if there are no any specific questions, we can move to looking and presenting the next area.
And Vladimir, there's still a couple of attendees. I think you can mute them on your end as the host.
It's not letting, you know, I'm trying to mute as many as I can. It's not letting me. No.
Okay.
Okay. Callisto, are you guys presenting?
Hello, everyone. My name is Callisto, and in my group, we had Anthony, Shay, and Jason. As Charmaine discussed earlier, we are the Electric Park District. We are the farthermost western part of the project, so ours is more urban focused, and while still focusing on everything such as the green infrastructure and public right-of-way systems. So here I'll introduce a couple of how our presentation is going to be discussed. So we have introduction that shows what is currently existing, and then our design proposal. So this is a site, and if you're familiar with the area, J. Rieger's right around here where the mouse is, and this is the Missouri River up north. So before we got into it, we had to analyze the area, the amount of rail, amount of water runoff, the public right-of-way system, and other things like that to figure out what we had to mess with. And then we looked at the connection points for the area. So as you can see it with the big purple line there, the main stem is Chestnut, and that connects to the rest of the East Bottoms as well as the city. And with that, we wanted to create a connection from the River Market and Independence Avenue to the Riverfront. Here's a trail system that we have. So the orange loop, that's our system. So a lot of our stuff is going to be categorized in the orange format. So our trails and follies and so on. So we then looked at some analysis such as key issues, and most of the issues here we had was water runoff along Gwinnett. It's more of a back road, and then on Chestnut, it deals more with disconnectivity from the rail and a few spots where there was water runoff. And with that, we then looked at the parcels that are there and what parcels that are open that belong to the city and what are available for us to design. And with that, we created a concept for the area, which is to develop a social hub with the existing amenities such as J. Rieger, Knuckleheads, and all other stuff that's sort of already there, and build upon that and increase the connection to the riverfront and the rest of the city. So now we go into the design. So we split it into two parts, the Electric Park District, which is the bigger part, and then the Gwinnett Corridor. So here's the entire stretch of the Chestnut Electric Park District. So here, down here is Independence Avenue, and over here is the Riverfront, with this street being the front street, and J. Rieger being right here in the center. But before we got there, we looked at the Independence Avenue connection, as well as the connection to the Kessler. So on Independence Avenue, it's a busy street. So what we wanted to do here is just create a two follies where people can come and fix their bikes, and also a bus stop to help with a roof and covering people's heads whenever they're waiting for the bus, and then the trail along the left. But as you get down further down the road, the streets get narrower. So the trail and the sidewalk remain closer to the street. And then we get to Electric Park, the park itself, the district. And this is what the area we're going to be talking about now. This is a Chestnut Bridge, and it's in two parts. But before we get there, we looked at the entire little area by itself where J. Rieger is. So J. Rieger is right here. We looked at the inactive spaces that are currently there. We looked at existing program, a lot of open green space, and a lot of parking and inactivity going on. And then we looked at the proposed program. So we wanted more mixed use events to promote that outdoor, and then also an extension of all the businesses that are there in case they want to use it. So with that, we created a master plan for the area. So J. Rieger is right here. The orange is the trail, and then this is the entire Electric Park with a lot of green space, bus stop corridor, and a bunch of other things that'll go into detail. So this is the view you get when you first go into the area. You'll see there's a viewing platform here that looks towards the bluff and also the factories that are existing there. It's a bit of a more of a scenic little detour for the pedestrians. This is the intersection. Right now it's 4 lanes, but we moved it down to 2 and made it more pedestrian friendly with bike trails going all the way across. So now we go into the underside of the bridge, and that side we needed some analysis. We needed to study it in section to see what type of spatial qualities it has. We needed to look at sewer main, stormwater runoff, and a couple other view sheds and what's currently open and some activity. And then we looked, then we made a little design here for it. And what it is a series of spaces that intersect each other, defined by their pavement patterns, and they overlap depending on how and who uses the area. So here's the service on the right, adaptable program, and then overlapping spaces. And here it is in section. So this is what it looks like. We continued the parking there. And as you can see in the back, this is the Yoli Tortilleria. And here it is in section. So as you can see, there's a little block here, block there, and a block here behind J. Rieger. So it's flexible. It also serves as a water catchment system to reduce the amount of stormwater runoff from the pavement surfaces. So it can go into the grass pavement and all sorts of things. So here is the configurations, different layout for different events. So on the left, we have an art exhibition. In the middle, we have a social gathering, and then on the right, an open market. And this is what it would look like with an art gallery, sort of bring your own artwork and then showcase it to everyone around here. And here it is on a different side in case they want to use that space. And here we have a view towards the backside of Rieger, which is this building right here. And then that's sort of more for J. Rieger, so they can extend their events outside while connecting to the underpass. And then we have the bridge in orange. So for the bridge, we have Knuckleheads and J. Rieger, which are 2 disconnected hotspots for the area, primarily the anchors. And the rail gets in the way. So if people wanted to get around to either area, they would have to go walk around or drive around. And a lot of people don't want to do that. So what we wanted to do here is connect it and stitch the disconnectivity here. So as you can see, you can walk towards the back, and we have a pedestrian footbridge that people can use, as well as covering for people on the trail. And this is what the tower, how it would be developed and made. Column beam structure with some tension cables and a couple other things. And here it is in section. So we have the street right here on the bridge, and we have a tower that can bring you down, take you all the way to Electric Park.
Please try not to confuse you, please. You have only 10 minutes, so make sure.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. And this is the Electric Park area. So we need to study the water runoff areas and where the water's deepest. We need to study in section, current events, and we develop a master plan to continue the playground there, the football field, and have an outdoor venue area. So in section, this is what it would look like. Performance space on the left, tree garden, playground amenities, and with the sports field. So closer to Rieger and Knuckleheads, we have an outdoor pavilion that can house the people around the area and have some concerts or a bunch of other activities in the area. And this is the structure it would have made, a removable wall for movie nights and all sorts of things, a shadow study. And here it is, and it has a wheel system that can move along. Here it is in section, the bridge, some terrace seating. Here's a view to the bluff, a view from the backside of Knuckleheads. And there is a tunnel underneath, so this is what you would feel when you come out of it. On the left, we have the playground, on the right, the open space. Here's more of the park, the basketball area. And here it is in section, looking back. We have retention ponds for water runoff. And then here it is, looking all the way back. And then we have the Riverfront Bridge. Now that one is just a bridge connecting over the rail. It's about 4 lanes of rail, and we wanted to connect people to the riverfront. So that's cut in section and how it relates to the road. Then we wanted to look at some of the housing that was currently there. There was a lot of housing that had a lot of vacancy and a lot of zoning issues. We looked at what's open, the existing parcel lines. Then we wanted to create a broad idea of how we wanted to develop it in the future with more commercial, mixed use sort of deal. And then eventually down the road, 15 years, 20 years, we develop more commercial and housing as well. And this is more of the streetscape as well. And then we wanted to connect people from the rest of the city and other cities as well. And that would be through a bus transfer system. So the current bus systems, here are a couple of diagrams showing the main routes that are currently there and where we would place a bus stop location using our Folly. So here's a couple more diagrams showing how we got there. And then this is the final plan for the bus stop park and go sort of deal with our Folly system. Here's a rendering looking towards the bluff. Here's a rendering in the area looking towards the existing housing. And then here it is overall looking towards the bridge and the viewing platform. Then we looked at Gwinnett as well. We looked at what the issues were, and we wanted to create a master plan as well of certain small interventions here. So mostly the water issues is our main primary focus here. And we wanted to sort of fix that by creating more retention ponds and some overflows as well in case floods get more serious. And that is the entire Electric Park District.
Thank you, Callisto. So to those of you who are participating as audience in this project, the question for you is we have 3 more areas of design development that we want to present to you. So just to make sure that we have a chance to fully engage you, I guess the question to you is, would you like to hear the presentations for the other 3 areas, or would you guys like to kind of discuss one area at a time as we move through? Okay, so Ashley said that she would like to hear the full presentation. So if that's okay with the rest of you, we will continue with presenting 3 other areas, and then we will open it to the discussion. Everybody wants to see, the majority of you wants to see the full presentation. So thank you, Callisto. Dominic, can you
Yes.
go on to the next one?
Absolutely. Hi guys, my name's Dominique and my partner was Izan, and we are doing the Riverfront. Riverfront Park is located in a unique geographical area as it has to deal with the ever-changing river levels, and it lies between the levee and the river. So this is the overall setup, and we'll get into the site analysis. So starting with the history, we mentioned in the introduction that the flooding allowed people to flee up to the top of the bluff. This was also a place that was a really large water, food, and trading amenity for the community. So we took some analysis looking at some of the parks on the river locally, as well as the Kessler Bluff parks. And we realized that view sheds, amenities, trails, unique activity, child-friendly, and animal-friendly was something that was consistent in all the projects. And our unique activity is obviously that interaction with the river and being completely embedded within the ecology of the site. So here's the connectivity. So we are connected through Independence Avenue up to Chestnut Trafficway that allows public access from downtown Kansas City, as well as Chateau Trafficway that allows access to the east side of the site. And for the concept of this design, we would begin doing a development that allows us to protect that river edge, minimize debris, silt, and erosion, and then remediating the area, allowing a connection back to Kansas City into Berkeley Riverfront Park. That's a part of the Kessler Parks and Boulevards system. And then in phase 2, we would begin doing limited intervention that allows that full connectivity across the site. And so into the riverfront design, we studied the hydrology, and obviously, like I said before, we have to deal with the ever-changing water levels as we are in front of the levee. So we're working on trying to protect that levee from stress on the river. And this is what the current hydrology of the river is doing. So as you can see in this corner, the water is running really fast, which is causing erosion on the site. So we're working on trying to figure out a way to prevent erosion from happening. And so this is the current topography and hydrology of the site and the primary view sheds that we use to form our design. And you can see where the site is flooding, and the highest part where there's no water flooding, that is currently the entry of the site right now. And that is the only connection point that we currently have. And even then, that connection point is blocked off to the public majority of the time because it's unsafe. So here's a service diagram showing how the Riverfront Park is serving the river and protecting the levee. We have this catchment system that catches large debris and small debris, and then these piers that begin deflecting water across the river. And then we have this constructed promenade that allows water to be deflected upstream as well to keep it away from our site so we can begin remediating the soil on our site. And here's a 3D simulation of what that begins to look like in model. And one big thing is forest restoration and protecting the forest. So trying to minimize the removal of trees as much as possible was very important to us. And so this is kind of a diagram of what that tree canopy begins to look like after the design development. And then choosing programmatic areas, we did based on connectivity and areas of intervention on our site. And that also through Viewshed allows these other discovery points that are embedded within the ecology a lot more to be discovered through the journey of the trail experience. And these Folly systems act as wayfinding tools throughout the park to let you know that program is coming. So you can see these Follies from a distance that allow you to be pulled through the site. And this is an axon of our restroom Follies that are used as one of our wayfinding tools. And then that brings us to our primary trail loop with secondary interior loops that bring access back to the levee, and then these tertiary smaller pathways that are designed within each area. And as you're walking through this loop system, you're presented with different view sheds that pull you through the park. And then that brings us to our final master plan. So now we will be going into the 8 different areas of the site, starting with the Chestnut connection. And the Chestnut connection, as you can see, is embedded within the context, trying to celebrate and tie people back to the city. And so one issue with the Chestnut connection was that there is this double intersection causing a lot of traffic. So we wanted to create a more straight axis of connection, manipulating the road and pulling it away from the levee a little bit to allow for a riverfront access point. And you can see in section, we studied the parks, trying to figure out how we can begin connecting Kessler Park with Electric Park and Riverfront Park. And then as you zoom in onto the site, we begin manipulating the form of the Follies to run parallel with the circulation and with the levee, allowing for the circulation to be shifted, kind of pulling people and directing them in the way to go to bring them to the access point on the other side of the levee.
Dominique, please think about time.
Yeah. And then this is what that access point begins to look like and the relationship with the levee. And as you can see, the Follies begins framing out the views of downtown. And then here's an axon view of that access point. And some zoomed in sections of number 2 is the canal. Number 3 is the very end of our section at the river edge. It's a peninsula lookout. And then the levee transition is number 1. And then here's a view of what that looks like at the top of the levee with a view shed to our canal that handles all of the outfall sewage that we would remediate. And then a view shed all the way down to the bottom, guiding you through the space. And then this is what the habitat of that canal would be. And then that brings us to our constructed edge promenade. So we pulled from the context, allowing for access and view sheds to pull people through the site. And the Follies begin framing these different view sheds. And here's a zoomed in of that as well. And then here's some renderings to show how the Folly is framing different functions. So you can see downtown, the boat access, and then the canal and Chateau Bridge. And then there's that overview. And then that brings us to the 3D and seeing how that works in section with the different streams of water, allowing water to move through the site, slow down, and be remediated. And then a zoomed in view of how that's interacting with the canal on the right and the river on the left. And then that brings us to our first discovery area, this recreation water pods area that allows for different activities to occur. And this is the habitat that would be. And it has direct access off of the levee so people can shift their experience back to the East Bottoms if they choose to. And then here's a zoomed in section of one of our camping areas. So as the water level rises, the activity of this area would shift. And then here's one of our water pod areas, allowing people to do some more ecological exploration and analyzing different habitats to allow schools and educational field trips. That then brings us to our amphitheater, which has primary view sheds. So it's turning its back away from the city and focusing on downtown Kansas City. And here's the progression as you move down that pathway with different gardens that people can come, picnic, and this can hold a different scale of events. And that's the habitat. And then this in 3D. And it is on axis with this viewing tower that you will see next. And finding a way to have easy cleanup in high flood levels was something that we were really considering in this area of the project. And then that brings us to our tower. So this tower allows us to be completely, know exactly where you are on the site with 3D views of the entire area of Kansas City, tying you directly to the city. And here's a view of the East Bottoms. And then that brings us to our second discovery point, which is this more ecological remediation area. As this area is filled with brownfields, we're working to remediate, and this is what that habitat begins to look like in perspective. And then there's also a more forested wetland area as well for a completely different experience. And then that's what that looks like in 3D. And as you can see with the pathways, there is a layered effect creating depth in the park. And then that brings us to our fishing piers that are in this forested wetland habitat, and they each have their own specific rooms framing different view sheds. So you have your own intimate relationship with the ecology and the city. And here's an axon showing how those views are, or those rooms are created with the tree canopy. And then our final area is the Chateau Connection. So this is about moving through down to the primary view shed at the end of the site and moving under this large industrial structure. And we used a light study to create the form of that and create garden spaces. And here's that in axon. You can see it's kind of weaving through the structure. And then that is that in 3D. And a view perspective of the primary trail and garden space that drags you through the site. And then that is all. This is just a little gift, so do you want me to go ahead and exit so we can move to the next one?
Vlad, you're muted.
Apologize. Thank you, Dominique. Yes, we need to move to the next.
No problem.
Appreciate it.
No problem.
Pam, are you ready to go next?
Stop sharing.
Yes. Hello, everyone. We are going to be discussing the industrial districts, which Charmaine Kilala, Chin Chin, and myself, Samantha Davis, worked on this area. This industrial district is composed of two in-depth focus areas. This is a more in-depth overall master plan. And so for our overall agenda, we'll be giving you an introduction to the site, and then we'll go more into depth into these two design areas, which includes Universal Ave to the east and the Recycling Center and Greenhouse Hub to the west. So first, we'd like to share with you some of our inventory maps we included regarding connectivity, land use, and identity and ecology. For connectivity, we know the industrial district is bordered by Chateau Traffic Way to the west, I-435 to the east, and East Front Street on the south, all seeing heavy traffic every day. And we also identified existing infrastructures you see on the right, like old railroad tracks and swing corridors that can be utilized. We've analyzed land use, land ownership, and incentives in the area. And here is an identity conclusion map. While the industrial district contains many manufacturing and logistics businesses that constantly utilizes freight, the district is also home to businesses and corporate offices that employ over 15,000 employees and brings in many more surrounding businesses to use these services. There are also 2,400 students through the MCC Business and Tech Campus, Frontier School of Innovation, Elementary School and Elementary School, as well as Frontier STEM High School and the KC Fire Academy. With the western half designated as a 100-year floodplain and its eastern half designated as a 500-year floodplain, historically, led to problems of flooding. Instead, included stormwater runoff. These maps show us lowest sites for retention and ecological conditions, including current brownfields, standing water, and soil conditions. And this leads to how this area fits into the overall design framework for the entire project. Building resilience is utmost priority in order to enhance the public realm, especially for the industrial district, where capturing as much stormwater as possible is the focus of the two design areas that hold primary stormwater basins. This map shows how this area then fits into the overall trail and loop system. And briefly, we would like to explain how this area fits into the overall phasing strategy. So phase 1 is mostly about the development of Riverfront Park and Electric Park. So during this phase, we recommend the industrial district area buys back land for stormwater management and for the already available land to start phyto remediation planting. Phase 2 is all about establishing this industrial district trail and design areas, along with truly establishing the green infrastructure network. In phase 3, we would hope that these areas are already established and running, and the plan would be about forming relationships with the school and community and nonprofit organizations. So this leads to the overall analysis of the site, which led to our design concepts. This first map explains key issues we've identified on the site when, in summary, this district is essentially a bowl with many connection barriers like Universal Ave. And if we want to store water, these are major areas that we can use and integrate with our green infrastructure system and trail. And finally, we came up with our concept of establishing the industrial district trail in a way that connects the existing schools, existing industries, and the community through these corridors and key areas that can result in long-term educational and career goals. And now Charmaine is going to be explaining the greenhouse area.
Hi everyone again, and for the greenhouse, first we are going to be talking about the industrial greenhouse, which is right next to the riverboat that we have just presented a while ago. Located at the intersection of Chateau Trafficway and the riverboat, currently what is existing in the site is the Missouri Organic Recycling, which is a mulch processing facility. This also acts as a food and yard waste drop-off for Central KC population. And the only thing that is separating this area from the riverboat and the Missouri River is the levee. When we started analyzing the site, we found that essentially this site is a bowl within a bowl, mostly dealing with water runoff coming from Chateau Trafficway and also from the levee. And then we also mapped the existing infrastructures for the reason that a huge part of our project is rethinking this infrastructure and how to make them into green infrastructure. And here is the experience coming from the riverboat, showing what those infrastructure look like and what the environment in here looks like. And here we found that there's actually intersection of users because of the existence of Missouri Organic and because of its proximity to Chateau Trafficway. We found that with Missouri Organic, there's at least 250 businesses that use this as a local drop-off for their food waste. And there's also quite a bit of traffic passing by the Trafficway. And as we have mentioned in the, before, there's almost like 16,000 employees here and 2,500 students. From here, we came up with this concept of creating a symbiotic relationship between what is existing on the site, which is like Missouri Organic, building off of that and creating a program, which is urban farming that can benefit East Bottoms and the surrounding community. Here is a summary of the identity of the place and how we use this part of the trail to connect the levee trail to the rails trails, while taking advantage of the view sheds. And here's showing you a master plan of our proposal. A huge part of the design is considering the environmental factors because these are important in order to make our building more efficient. From the solar and wind studies, we arranged the greenhouse into these different programs that makes the most sense. And we added retractable roof and retractable door canopy in order to maximize daylight and ventilation. And this program and the programs in our greenhouse in turn create a symbiotic relationship, not just to Missouri Organic Recycling, but also to the proposed retention basin on its right. If you're wondering, this is just showing you the arrangement of those different programs that we have mentioned. And the approaching from the levee is seeding, and then after that would be microgreens, aquaponics, and then it becomes the kitchen and then gathering space. Basically what we wanted to create is a farm to table experience that can be used in order to help people with their long-term educational and career goals. And if you're wondering why did we decide to use aquaponics and microgreens, this is for the reason that we found that these two create the highest profit margin. This is just showing you a plan of what it looks like. The idea is as they pass through the greenhouse, they will want to get inside, be involved with the microgreens and the aquaponics serving as living walls. And this is just showing you a breakdown of what the greenhouse looks like. We have mentioned in the very introduction of our presentation that we have this Folly system that is basically a repeatable modular system. And this is what created a huge part of our form. And we've implemented retractable roof system, like I said, in order for ventilation and also to maximize daylight, and as well as retractable garage doors. And then the aquaponic and microgreen shelves acting as living walls. And the reason we started studying the view sheds in our site is because of the location of the greenhouse. This acts as a landmark and a billboard coming from Chateau Trafficway. And this is just showing you what our living machine looks like. With the microgreens, it's highly reliant on LEDs and not really natural daylight, and that affects what this greenhouse looks like at night. With the aquaponics that uses a rotating carousel, that way that way the shelves get even daylight and also gets dipped in the water. And this is just showing you how the greenhouse affects the environment that it is in. And now this is the experience coming from Chateau Trafficway when you've arrived to East Bottoms and what the greenhouse looks like. This is in the underpass. Arriving to the greenhouse, what the living walls will look like. As you pass through the greenhouse, the goal is to encourage people to want to join in order for them to learn how to grow their own food. This is showing you how those microgreens affect the look of the site at night. And this is what it could look like as a year-round food production site. And finally, this is just showing you that retention basin we were talking about. And then now we'll be talking about its connection to the east. This is the rails to trails, and or Samantha, do you want to go ahead?
Yes. So this is the rails to trails that we were talking about, connecting these areas. This is kind of how we feel it would look. And so this leads to our second key design area, which is Universal Ave. So this is an existing infrastructure map to give you some background on the area. We know that this is probably one of the most well thought out streets in the East Bottom, with a daylighted stream already placed in the center of the roads and a stormwater management system already placed and working. There are also Eldorado signature pieces currently acting as entry landmarks of East Front Street. Here are some aerials giving you a better idea of the site in Universal Ave. And the vacant land areas in the north. So as we've mentioned earlier, there are many employees and students in the area. Off of Universal Ave, there are 4 schools and almost 2,500 students. And this gives you a summary of who all will be affected by this development. And this walkability map shows bus connections to the area and how far a 5- and 10-minute walk is on the site. This is a water capacity map and was the first priority of the design proposal, where we calculated how much stormwater storage capacity we could actually increase, which led to our overall master plan of the area. The proposal is to provide services to the workers and students in the area by adding a green immersive experience that is a reprieve from the surrounding industrial hustle and bustle. The key map on the left represents the 3 main strategies to this proposal: universal bridges, the universal playgrounds, and the North Lab Park. So this first strategy is what we call universal bridges, which consists of a series of bridges connecting East Front Street to Levy Road and connecting east to west, where people are directly integrated with the green infrastructure system and landscaping. Here's an experience going through Universal Ave currently, which we found has caused a barrier between the east and the west side of Universal Ave. So we started mapping the vehicular and possible pedestrian connectivity because our goal is to create a coexistence of the two. Then we mapped the important intersections and property entry points, connected those to finally form our bridging boardwalk. So here is an overall aerial view of Universal Avenue and how the universal bridges can look like where we've what it can look like, where we've implemented traffic calming techniques and safe crossings to connect the east to the west. And this is showing you how the biofiltration works and how that green infrastructure affects the trail and the experience. The second strategy is the school park and universal playgrounds, a much needed program for the schools that also serves as a sponge for stormwater. Overall, the plan focuses on recreation, water storage, and increased vegetation. And we feel this is appropriate and needed because of the students in this area. And the only recreation currently is this parking lot right here where my mouse is, turned into a playground. Here's a rendering of how we envision this park and stormwater storage, with the potential to also use this space for career fairs, events, and farmer markets. And here is another rendering of the park from the other direction. The third strategy is the North Lab Park, where at the end of Universal Ave, nature, vacant land, and stormwater basins kind of take over from there, proving inaccessible currently. So here are a few existing site photos of this area. And a rendering showing the proposed trail through the nature corridor and stormwater basins. In a section diagram explaining how this green infrastructure system works with the boardwalk. And here's another rendering leaving this area and looking across the street before you get to the North Lab Park programs. So North Lab Park primarily serves as a nature and forest-like experience, fully on boardwalks because the site is consistently holding water. So we looked at these different typology types that could be added onto this park anywhere and implemented as needed. Typology 1 includes a seating pavilion with seating, tables, informational boards, and bike racks. Typology 2 is an educational seating attraction, including informational boards, a net seating attraction, and stationary binoculars for bird watching. Typology 3 is an outdoor classroom where we believe students can come to learn about different environmental careers. And lastly, typology 4 is an outdoor lab meant to be a place where students can go to study soil, plant roots, and remediation strategies, including floating wetlands. And that is it for the industrial district.
Thank you, Sam. Now we have one more group left, and then we'll open it up to discussion. So I think it's James and Tim who are going to be presenting.
Okay. All right, hi, I'm Tim Roden, and my team members are Tavia Navy and James Ryan and Alex Dowling. And we all worked on the working landscape design of the East Bottoms. Sorry. Okay. And sorry about that. I'm going to go ahead and try to sum up about 12 months of rigorous study in about 10 minutes, but don't worry, there's not a test. At least I don't think. I hope not. So compared to the other sites in the project, this site's the most easternmost, and it is also the lowest part of the East Bottoms. The new loop system connects our site to the city, and the working landscape is, the identity color is yellow, which is displayed in bike trails and Folly designs to stand out from the gray industrial landscape. This area is characterized by flooding, heavy industry, poor ecological habitats, and public disconnectivity. The Missouri and Blue Rivers border the site to the east and south, while the Highway 435 frames the western edge. This leads us into our concept. Considering these issues, we came up with the idea of a coexistence of these three developing layers: a redeveloped green infrastructure system, a restored ecological habitat, and a public access to the site and industry. The green infrastructure layer solves the issues of flooding and builds upon existing systems in the area which needed manipulation of topography. This layer requires a system of conveyance and retention of stormwater. The ecological layer involves reconnecting habitats and restoring ecology. This is grounded in the idea that we're taking land and using it for industry that's normally used for industry and farming and returning it back to nature. Lastly, the public development layer focuses on the coexistence of industry and people, which the goal is allow minimal physical access, but provide extraordinary experiences and unique views. These three layers come together to make up the main concept of the working landscape. The key areas that we're going to be looking at further is the development of the three areas, which is these ones. To be concise, we looked at green infrastructure, which includes 3 water basins in the Evergy plant, ecology, which involves the wildlife habitat corridor, and public access, which includes public spaces along the trail. Oops. And this will begin the green infrastructure segment of our design. Because of the issues created by the combination of sewage infrastructure, backflow, contaminated soil, it's necessary to create a network of bioswales that flow to a common geographic low point. We can see these issues by analyzing the backflow diagram that certain places cannot permeate into the aquifer. Using the lowest points on the site, we made a terminus of network of bioswales. These were the candidates for the water basins that would retain the runoff from East Bottoms. Because these low points have relatively low soil quality, we chose to excavate them. Then the soil would then be removed and used as a cap to cap coal ash brownfields that exist as a byproduct of Evergy's Hawthorne generating facility. The overall tactic of green infrastructure in the landscape is this: to cut soil, then use that soil to cap and remediate polluted soil over time. The void created by the cut would be filled with collected runoff, and then the capped soil would then be a foundation for a utility scale photovoltaic array that utilizes existing electrical infrastructure. To help visualize the amount of soil, we've drawn a section through the area. This also aids in visualizing the amount of water that East Bottoms handles. By manipulating topography, we've leveled off areas that require attention and graded the soil in a manner that allows large amounts of sheet runoff to be collected in one of the basins. The transformation of the topography can be seen here, as the basins that are excavating in red work collectively to cap the brownfields, which is in blue. In a recent statement given this March by Evergy, they declared that they would be decommissioning all of their coal burning plants between the year 2040 and 2050, except for one that was built in 2010. That means there's going to be, for this one, there will be a 550 megawatt electrical dearth, which we'll need to cover as much as we can, using alternative methods to non-renewable energy. Using aerial imagery dating back to 1990, we identified that these 3 areas would be in need of particular attention. This is how the water would fill up the basin, and then simultaneously we can see the solar panels that would be placed on the top of the caps. The soil is graded so that the water runs along the cap to its respective swale and then is redirected to the basin south of the solar array. All these things culminate to form the overall plan for this area. Featured above is over there, I guess, is the formation of topography, the direction of water, and the placement of the photovoltaic arrays. Here's some of the calculations that we went through. An optimistic panel type is the gallium arsenide thin film crystal panel, which peaks at about 29% efficient. But just last month, the non-renewable energy lab made a cell that reached about 50%. It's a new world record. I had a chance to talk to some solar developers, and they argued that this site in 2050 could potentially support up to 37 to 43 megawatts. The series of undulating soil forms not only guides the water to the swales while reducing the velocity of water, but also creates a visually interesting plinth for the solar array to sit on. Again, by manipulating topography, the solar panels are placed on the slopes, and because of the angles of the slope, a sort of pixelization of the sky and the clouds above occurs. The goal of the stormwater management system is to convey and retain stormwater runoff for the majority of East Bottoms. With this, we'll be creating habitable environments, which also remediate stormwater that we are retaining. First, we explored the existing sewage conditions, which consist both of separate and combined sewage systems. So with our overarching green infrastructure framework, we want to solve the main issues of the site by adding trees, which sequesters carbon and reduces surface water runoff, and that is caused by existing systems and surrounding rivers. To further explain the green infrastructure framework and the working landscape, we want to look at these specific areas and go in depth to what these systems look like and how they work. Part of the overall system of swales, this is one of the stormwater basins. It, though mostly serves average east photovoltaic arrays. In a 10-year flood event, it would look like this, then a 50-year and 100-year event. Water steps down through the weir system here that is pictured, and before entering the basins, helping slow the water down. This is one of the retention components of the stormwater management systems, and this is how its components are related. During large rainfall events, water will be conveyed to this basin, which is the primary stormwater basin. The entire East Bottom sees about 390 million gallons of water during a 6-inch rainfall, and this one alone holds about 180 million gallons at peak capacity, which is about 45% of the total rainfall. Then again, this one in a 10-year rainfall, 50-year and 100-year rainfall. Oh, sorry, I keep going past it. Accidentally, okay. Here we are. All right, so this kind of reveals how it's possible to contain this much water as it gets very deep. Over the course of 24 hours, then, water would flow from that basin to this basin, which is the wetland basin, which has a maximum capacity of about 142 million, which brings it to 320 million gallons total so far, or about 83% of the large rainfall event. Then this one in a 10-year, 50, and 100-year event. And for reference of those that might not understand the 50-year event, that means that there's a 1 in 50 chance that this will happen each year, or 1 in 100, or 1 in 10, for example. So this is how the components are related again in section. In order to get these water to these basins, first we need to convey the water to them. This will be done in a series of swales and rain gardens. And this is how they convey water. With this bioswale conveyance system, there's a series of pockets, and in order to slow the movement of water and develop a treatment train to help remediate stormwater along the way. Okay, now we're moving on to the ecology development layer. The industrial nature of the working landscape juxtaposes an ecologically significant Missouri riparian corridor. The proximity necessitates considerations between revitalizing degraded habitats while developing a symbiotic relationship between the natural world and the industrial landscape. These are some of the native wildlife that you might find along in this area whose populations we're looking to improve with our design. After some preliminary wildlife research, we found that Kansas City was home to an overlap in flyways of migratory waterfowl. And this, in tandem with the site's adjacency to the Missouri River, creates a unique opportunity to help migratory waterfowl populations on an international scale as these flyways extend far beyond the US. Yet before we create a restoration plan, we need to look at the land use and the suitability of sites for ecological revitalization within the working landscape. From this information right here, we have found 4 sites for key habitats, or sites for 4 key habitats. There were a number of ecological detriments that needed to be mitigated in order to develop ecological loop system, promoting biodiversity across the fragmented habitats. After analyzing the findings, we developed these concepts to establish a framework for restoration efforts. To create these habitats, first we'll need to control, burn, seed and plant native vegetation, then manage and monitor new growth to promote inhabitation for wildlife. While these fragments are being recuperated, we'll need to connect them first in order to reduce conflicts caused by vehicular infrastructure. The first step is to burn invasive vegetation that crowds out native vegetation. The process would be done by a certified fire team that culls invasive populations within the controlled burn area. After burning, then seeding and planting of native vegetation is done to prevent regrowth of invasives whose root systems are still intact, and also to prevent erosion in their absence, which is important. In order to establish prime habitats for wildlife, we've developed a typology system. This is done to create a framework for an ecological succession to develop resilient native ecosystem. Oops, sorry, that kind of blurred together there. Okay, marsh habitats are being developed for the purpose of retaining stormwater for a majority of East Bottoms. However, the marshes are also ecologically significant for migrating the waterfowl, as mentioned earlier. Okay, as the ecological signature of East Bottoms, the restoration of Missouri and the blue riverbanks are essential for improving native fish life and ultimately waterfowl population. Enhancing existing riparian forests and removing invasive species will create opportunities for native flora to emerge and create opportunities for native fauna to thrive. Repopulating agricultural areas and underutilized properties with native grasses, wildflowers will improve pollinator populations. We then developed a phasing strategy in order to stagger the ecological succession with the significant habitats first, while also creating areas necessary for the stormwater management system. In order for these habitats to thrive, they first need to be connected. Oops. Okay, and after analyzing the areas of conflict between vehicular and wildlife circulation, we found that Front Street and the elevated rail crossing were the most important areas to develop a system for conflict mitigation, not migration. The construction land bridge was found to be the most effective tool for mitigating conflict along this wildlife corridor. To develop the best system, we needed to break down the existing circulation to make sure our design strategy mitigated these conflicts while promoting safe crossings for wildlife. In order to be effective, we needed to allow multiple routes for animals to move so that prey could avoid predation along the entrances of the land bridges. Otherwise, the purpose of the crossing would be rendered ineffective. To make it more comfortable for wildlife, we pulled away from the tracks as much as possible to reduce the noise and also the rail kill effect, which is found to reduce many small vertebrate populations. To add to this comfort, we also added vegetation to the land bridge with layers of native plantings in order to extend the tree line for continued safe navigation. And this is how that would look as a detail. Looking from an animal's perspective, we can see that this naturalized environment on a man-made structure. And then from the apex of the bridge, you can see that the wildlife crossing culvert that runs underneath the railroad tracks for multiple circulation routes. The separation for the wildlife from vehicular infrastructure creates a more habitable crossing environment, which, as you can see, the vertical rise, as well as the gateway that's created for the entrance of the landscape, working landscape. Finally, here's a bird's eye view of the entirety of the wildlife corridor crossing structure. Now we get into the public access aspect of the design. The public access is broken down into two main elements, which is the trail and the experiential nodes. Currently, working landscape has minimal public access and poor street design for pedestrians and cyclists. This area is also highly used by rail and creates various disconnections throughout the site. Vehicle and truck traffic is also a big area in our big issue in our area, with Highway 435 and Front Street both being highly used. So one of the main concepts of the public design is then to be part of the project's overall system that connects West Bottoms to East Bottoms in the greater Kansas City. Working Landscape's key connection point to the north creates a connection to the Riverfront Park, and to the west it connects the industrial district and the South Blue River. We have large industrial buildings in our site, and we want to use these as, along with our Folly system, and to form trail experiential nodes. We looked at other natural aspects of the site, green infrastructure system, industrial landmarks, area parks, and existing trails. When we overlay these maps, we found that these experiential nodes should be, and how the public can interact with these, with the newly designed infrastructure and ecology system. These experiential nodes have our project Design Follies, the system that focuses on connecting, viewing, and learning. These were used, sorry, and here we're using the bridge folly to connect, the towers for the folly views, and service follies to learn. Okay. For the public design, we looked into the design areas that include two trailheads that have a sequential experience, and smaller designs that focus on immediate site and newly designed developing layers. First, we look at the Front Street trailhead, which is our vehicle-oriented trailhead. It's more oriented toward to harness highway traffic from 435 and Front Street. Front Street gives us an opportunity to explore the coexistence of industrial traffic and pedestrian street design, what it can be. Front Street was designed as a sequence that explores different typologies down a busy industrial traffic road. From the industrial district area, we move down the Universal Avenue and come to Front Street, which where we're taken to the middle of the median. The median of the trail becomes a boardwalk with rails that allows for protection from the traffic and vegetation on the south side for shade. Under the boardwalk, there's a bioswale that is a larger part of the green infrastructure system. The following sections exemplify this. So now it brings us to the underpass design for Highway 435. This is a diagram explaining the redesign of the circulation for both vehicle and pedestrians. The existing condition isn't very safe for pedestrians and cyclists. So to create a safe crossing for pedestrians, a four-way stoplight will be introduced as protective trail design. And then as we can see in this, the experience in the current experience is very narrow and dark, and to be frank, it's kind of terrifying.
Tim, think about time.
Yep. Whoops. Okay. All right, moving further down, now we're going to Corrington Avenue, which takes us to the main GI basin overlook. This is the existing condition of that site and what we're proposing. And this is kind of to minimally allow access, but while also giving focus on more views of the experience in the basin and habitats. With the tower, we also use this as a wayfinding tool, so you're able to see the Evergy building in the distance and keep yourself oriented. Back to Front Street, we see the Wildlife Corridor Bridge. As of today, this area does not have sidewalks suitable for pedestrians to create a fluid circulation down Front Street. With the new design, we're able to solve this problem. In the interstitial space between these two, it forms a space that allows the public to engage with the habitat connection. At the end of Front Street, we get to the trailhead. This is how it currently is. and trailhead design. This trailhead engages with the wetland stormwater basin to the north and Evergy solar field to the east. This trailhead will focus on the circulation of vehicles, pedestrian, and green infrastructure system, and how they come together like this. At the top of the bridge, the public engages with views to solar farm at Evergy and the views to the stormwater basin to the north. The components can be seen here. This is the main view overlooking Evergy, again, to keep the viewer oriented. And this is sort of how it all comes together with Evergy all the way in the distance. Going south on the trail, then we run into the green infrastructure bridge. And this bridge is the one that is over the over that basin. The bridge is located on the edge of the basin and can be seen right here. There's a gentle slope that allows for the viewer to get up to the top so they can view the solar field and also the basin. Lastly, we move to our Blue Riverfront Park trailhead. The Blue Riverfront trailhead is pedestrian oriented because of its location, North Indian Mound neighborhood and Independence Avenue to the west and south, and the existing parks and athletic fields. The area connects those residents to Blue River, but also the rest of the working landscape. This area is an essential part of the overarching connection to the studio that the studio is connected. If we first want to look at the connection to Indian Mound and the residents in the area. Starting here atop Indian Mound, connecting to Independence Avenue, we start to snake our way down the trail, as it's a switchback. To engage Independence Avenue, we have to cross over industrial traffic as well as rail traffic. On the other side of the bridge, we come to the trailhead area of Blue River. The existing condition contains heavy rail, industrial buildings, and green spaces through the site, whereas the new design extends the green spaces throughout and activates the riverfront while also creating a new vehicle connection. What this trailhead can start to do is an exciting new riverfront with green spaces and recreational activity. This creates a connection to the natural amenities that we have on our site. The overall concept for this is to provide circulation for pedestrian, cyclists, and vehicles using the riverfront. We explore the vehicular connection by using existing parking and pulling it to the trailhead. And cyclists, we have industrial traffic to avoid using bridges and creating smooth transition from Indian Mound to Blue River.
Tim, time, please.
I have 4 slides. Okay. Then looking at the boat launch. Okay. And that's just the launch here. Okay, and then the last few slides, just looking at overall phasing. Our phasing is based around the ecological development and restoration, and is explained in the ecological development layer. And then, so we start with phase 1, which is just, which is the wetland stormwater, and then phase 2, the riparian forest and ecological corridor. And phase 3, bottomless prairies are restored and the GI bridge at Evergy is established. And then just a schedule bar to show that. And that concludes the working landscape portion of the bottoms. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Tim. So now I would like to, this is really our presentation. I know we shared a lot with you. And so I would like to open it up to discussion and questions. And as you bring up your questions, we'll be able to pull up the specific presentations, and all of the team members who work on the project will have a chance to engage you in the discussion.